It is currently a renaissance for pop punk fans. I feel like every 4 or 5 years, all the same pop punk bands are kind of on a similar album release cycle. So every 4 or 5 years, all the big pop punk bands put out albums, and everyone at the same time gets back into hype and gets back into their like teenage selves. In the last few weeks alone, right? Of course, blink-182 just put out their new album One More Time, which is an absolute banger. But over the last month, right? So we also had a new single from Sum 41, classic band. I've spoken about them on this pod so many times before. And it's back to their pop punk roots. It's called Landmines. Absolutely great. And then if that wasn't enough, right? Green Day have now started teasing their new album with a new single that should be out by the time this podcast is out. Green Day has also announced their new song, The American Dream Is Killing Me. I just think this is such a peak time to be alive for people who grew up listening to those bands. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager in like year 8, year 9, the golden trilogy of bands was Blink-182, Green Day, and Sum 41. And in the next, like, within the space of like 3 or 4 months, all of them are putting out new albums, right? It is such an incredible time for me to be alive. And I encourage you to get around these albums when they come out, because the pop punk movement is such a beautiful movement of music. And I'm so glad that these bands are still around holding the torch for that era of music. But of course, I do have to talk a little bit more about Blink-182's brand new album, One More Time. I did do a full review on YouTube. I was actually the first person in the world to review the album. Go Mike. And I'll get to that a bit later. But I was the first person in the world to review the new Blink album, and I absolutely love it. And I've been listening to it every day on repeat since it came out. And, you know, I feel like most people who listen to this podcast are just similar people to me, probably know at least the broad strokes of the Blink-182 story. But just a quick recap. This is the first album in a very long time featuring the most well-known lineup of Blink-182, which is Mark Hoppus, Tom Delonge, and Travis Barker. Mark and Tom, obviously co-lead singers of Blink-182. Tom, the much more raspy, nasally Californian twang, the one who goes, "Don't waste your time." And Mark is the more kind of conventional, it's like, "Hello there," right? We all know that. They're back together. They've done this new album. It's amazing. It's such a great combination of all of their musical stylings across the years, and I'm in love with it. Go watch the review on YouTube, but I did want to talk a little bit more about it on the pod, because I think it's such an open and honest and earnest album, and they have this song called Anthem Part 3. It's the first track on the album. They had a song, obviously, back in 1999, they had a song called Anthem. 2001, they had Anthem Part 2. 2023, they've got Anthem Part 3. And the lyrics are so beautiful to me because it's so clear that they are reflecting on themselves. I've actually got isolated lyrics here. I love how they sing. I'll play it for you, but the lyrics are, and it's clearly about the band. "This time I won't be complacent. The dreams that I gave up and wasted. A new ride, a new high, and I'm on fire." Like, take a listen. "This time I won't be complacent. The dreams I gave up and wasted." And you know, hearing vocals isolated on any song is always amazing, because you can hear how layered those harmonies are between Tom and Mark there. It's just so beautiful to me. I cried when I listened to the album. It just meant so much to me, and I talked about it in the review, but like, this band genuinely means so much to so many people, and to hear them singing that, you know, at the start of the album, and just hearing those two voices together again. I talked about Lennon and McCartney, and I'm not trying to say that DeLonge and Hoppus as a writing duo are as big as Lennon and McCartney, but I do think they're very similar, you know, as two really talented songwriters who just met one day in California. By chance, those two met because Mark's sister was going out with a guy who was friends with Tom. And they went over to his house, and that day that Mark Hoppus and Tom DeLonge met, they wrote a song called Carousel, which would be the first single of Blink-182, which they still play live today. It's a fantastic song. They wrote it the day they met in a garage. And again, I take you back to what I was saying about John Lennon and Paul McCartney, is like, one day they just met, now they're here. It's crazy. I just think it's really beautiful. Like, there's been so much sort of bad blood and almost like a brotherly feud. You know, Tom has left the band twice in like the 30 years they've been a band. He's caused a lot of issues. He's come back. He's trying to he's made peace. Mark Hoppus had cancer. He nearly died. A lot of the lyrics in the album are reflecting of that. They've come back together again, you know, to do this album one more time, right? That's what this is, and it's such a love letter to the fans, and there's so many cool songs. I want to do a shout out to one of the songs called Blink Wave, which is called Blink Wave because it's like an ode to 80s new wave music, and it's like really synthy and like really like almost distorted vocals to make it sound like a New Order, or I don't know, not necessarily Joy Division, but like The Cure or New Order, which, you know, these guys grew up listening to. And just how important it is to fans of this band. Again, like, I'm rambling, but like they put out, they're not doing heaps of publicity around this album. They put out an 1.5-hour interview with Zane Lowe. Zane Lowe, of course, is an incredibly famous music journalist, I suppose, and radio host. He's from New Zealand, lives in America, has a fantastic podcast with Apple Podcasts. I think it's just called the Zane Lowe Interviews or something, where he's just such a great music journalist. Asks the right questions, cares about the bands, cares about the music. He gives a shit about music. Like, if you like music, listen to Zane Lowe. And that's why Blink-182 got him to do this big interview. And if you're a fan of Blink, watch it. If you're not a fan of Blink, watch it anyway, because you'll learn so much. And there were two things that stood out for me. First is like how bad things were in the band. Like, Mark actually says this at one point. Like, they're all in a room together. Clearly, they've had a lot of open conversations, but Mark says this.
I didn't know that Blink would ever get back together or that I would ever share a stage with Tom. And I told management, I told Travis, I told everybody, I'm like, I'm not setting foot on stage again with that dude. Not a chance.
So Mark was just so bitter at Tom for leaving the band again after their first reunion in like 2011. And of course, Matt Skiba from Alkaline Trio joined the band. They did 2 albums with Alkaline Trio, one of which was very commercially successful and critically successful, was nominated for a Grammy, was, I think, one of the highest charting Blink-182 albums of all time, right? They then did another one called 9. That was the name of the album. Wasn't as commercially or critically successful. And then I think from there, what I gather from this interview is it was Travis Barker who actually was the one pushing for Tom to rejoin the band and for the original trio to come back. And I loved hearing this from Travis because I do think it's true. And that's not to say I don't think Matt Skiba did an amazing job in Blink, but I just loved hearing this. Take a listen.
And then we got to a point where, after talking to Tom a few times, I would talk to Mark and I'd be like, I really feel like Blink is me, you, and Tom. And as soon as we accept that and we just don't settle for anything less than that, I just think that's the future. That is truly Blink, and we shouldn't exercise Blink or be out there playing unless it's us 3.
I love that. I'm so glad that we've got this album. If you've never heard a Blink-182 album, if you're not into that style of music, can I encourage you to just get on Spotify today and listen to One More Time by Blink-182, the album in its entirety. Just listen to it, mull it over. It might not be for you, but just listen to it and know how much went into this record, how much history is in this record, and how much it means to like people like me and, you know, millions of people around the world who, you know, have sold out so many shows all around the world. I was trying to go to one of the shows in Portugal while I was overseas, but I couldn't get tickets. But